Hello, and thank you for joining me. In this class, we're going to be working with cinnamon, not as a trend, not as a flashy spell ingredient, but as an old, steady ally from the hearth. Cinnamon has lived for centuries in kitchens, sick rooms, trade routes, and even winter cupboards. This class is rooted in folk medicine, where food, medicine, and subtle magic are never separate. What warmed the body also warmed the home. What preserved food also protected the family. And cinnamon sits right at the crossroads. This class is not about doing more. It's about understanding what you are already using. Before we get into the information and the bones of this class, I want to begin by grounding. Folk medicine always started with relationships. So I want you to think about your very first memory of cinnamon. Maybe a kitchen, a holiday, a person, a season. Notice what comes up. That memory carries meaning. It carries comfort. It carries experience. In folk practices, memory itself was part of the medicine. When we work with herbs in this way, we're not memorizing facts, we're remembering. Cinnamon comes from the inner bark of the trees of the cinnamon family. You'll usually hear about cassia cinnamon or Ceylon cinnamon. In folk medicine, the exact spices mattered far less than how the body responded. Healers would ask, does it warm? Does it move? Does it help or aggravate? Folk medicine was observational, not academic. It was based on lived results. In folk language, herbs are described as how they behaved. Cinnamon is warming, drying, stimulating, and moving. If you imagine the body as a fire, cinnamon doesn't explode the flame. It coaxes the embers back to life. This energetic understanding is what later gives rise to cinnamon's metaphysical reputation. Cinnamon was traditionally used for cold conditions, not fever heat. Cold hands and feet, low vitality, struggling digestion, and winter depletion. This kind of cold isn't dramatic, it's quiet and draining. Cinnamon restores warmth gently. This is why cinnamon became associated with comfort, safety, and home. A warmed body feels more present in the world. Cinnamon is a mover. It encourages circulation, such as blood, digestion, and energy. When folk healers saw stagnation, things like heaviness, stuck digestion, or low motivation, cinnamon was often part of the solution because movement in the body often brings movement in the mind. This is the root of cinnamon's association with momentum and courage. Cinnamon is slightly drying, which is helpful in damp and heavy conditions, but not in dry or inflamed states. Folk medicine teaches restraint. More is not better. The right herb at the wrong time becomes a problem. This is also an important metaphysical lesson as well, because too much fire can burn down the house. Cinnamon has been used for digestion across cultures for thousands of years. Gas, bloating, cramping, and weak digestion, especially when digestion felt cold or sluggish. It doesn't soothe, it activates. It tells the digestive fire to wake up and do its job. Cinnamon is often paired with ginger and honey to soften its sharpness when it's used for digestive folk medicine. When digestion improves, something else happens. People feel clearer, more grounded, and more confident. In folk understanding, a settled belly supports a settled mind. That's why cinnamon becomes associated with voice, confidence, and presence. This isn't glamour magic. its embodied steadiness. Folk healers didn't talk about blood sugar the way that we do today. They talked about how the body handled sweetness. Cinnamon helped the body to work with sweet foods rather than being overwhelmed by them. This is why the use of cinnamon in our food becomes important, not cinnamon supplements and not the need for extreme. In folk tradition, prosperity meant enough. Enough food, enough trade, enough warmth to last the winter. Cinnamon supports steadiness, not sudden wealth. It supports momentum, reliability, and continued work. That's why you see cinnamon tied to business, trade, and hearth prosperity, and not of lottery winning magic. Cinnamon helps to preserve food and protects our body through winter illness. That practical protection becomes symbolic protection. Cinnamon protects by maintaining vitality, not by blocking threats. It keeps what sustains us from spoiling our food, health, home, and even our energy. Cinnamon honey is one of the gentlest folk preparations that you will find. Honey carries warmth into the body slowly and safely. Medicinally, it supports digestion and winter wellness. Metaphysically, it represents nourishment, attraction, and steady provision. This is a medicine that you live with, not a medicine that you force. Preparing a cinnamon tea is truly folk magic. A single cinnamon stick that is steeped for 10 to 15 minutes is enough. More is not better. This tea is for cold, sluggish states, especially in winter. It's not meant for daily use by everyone. Folk medicine always respects timing. When using herbs, it's just as important to know when not to use one as it is to know when to use it. For instance, cinnamon can aggravate inflammation, anxiety, heartburn, heart condition, sunburns, and active hot flashes. Folk wisdom reminds us that too much fire can burn down the house, and discernment is always necessary. In folk tradition, metaphysical meaning followed physical action. Because cinnamon warms, it attracts. Because it moves, it quickens. Because it preserves, it protects. The magic is not separate, it's the natural extension of experience. Now let's take a minute to do a mini folk practice. Place your hands together and feel the warmth. Think of one place in your life that feels cold, heavy, or stalled. Imagine warmth steadily and gently spreading, not rushing, not forced. That's cinnamon's lesson, a steady fire that restores movement. Cinnamon teaches us to tend to the fire and not chase flames. May you know when to warm and when to rest. May your body, work, and spirit move steadily. May your home be protected by care, not fear. And may we remember the old ways and allow it to remind us that healing begins in the ordinary. As we conclude our cinnamon class, there is again one final reminder. It is just as important to know when not to use an herb as it is to know when to use one. For anyone who may be struggling with underlying health conditions or using pharmaceutical medications, please discuss with your physician before making any dietary changes or incorporating any type of herbal remedies. Although herbs are our allies, we must remain safe because the world that we live in has changed. I hope that you join us again, and until next time, blessed be.